This is the true story of a quiet English rectory that became known as the most haunted house in Britain. For decades, witnesses described footsteps echoing in empty halls, a phantom nun walking near the church, and objects moving on their own. Then, in 1939, the building burned to the ground. But many believe the haunting never ended. Our story begins in the small, rural village of Borley, nestled near the Suffolk border in England. Picture it: quiet farmland, narrow, winding roads, and an old parish church that has stood for centuries. It's the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, and old stories are passed down through generations. Right next to that ancient church, a large Victorian home known as Borley Rectory was built. It was imposing, perhaps a little gloomy, and it would eventually gain a terrifying reputation that would spread far beyond the village borders. The rectory was constructed in 1862 for the Reverend Henry Bull. It was a grand, sprawling house designed to accommodate him and his large family of 14 children. But almost as soon as the family moved in, strange stories began to circulate among the locals. They claimed the land itself was cursed, tied to a much older, tragic legend. The story went that centuries earlier, a nun from a nearby convent had fallen in love with a monk. When their forbidden romance was discovered, the punishment was swift and brutal. The monk was reportedly executed, and the nun was walled up alive within the convent. Whether this dark tale was true or just local folklore, it became inseparable from the property, casting a long shadow over the new rectory. Throughout the late 1800s, the Bull family became the first witnesses to the strange phenomena at Borley. Several of the Reverend's daughters reported seeing a ghostly nun walking silently through the garden, particularly at dusk. They described a sorrowful figure in black, gliding along a path they nicknamed the Nun's Walk. Inside the house, servants grew increasingly unnerved. They would hear footsteps pacing in empty hallways, and service bells would ring on their own, with no one even near them. These events were whispered about in the village and within the family, but they were rarely documented publicly. For nearly 60 years, the haunting of Borley Rectory remained a local secret, a collection of chilling fireside tales. That all changed in 1928, when the Reverend Guy Smith and his wife moved into the rectory. The house had been vacant for some time and was in a state of disrepair. Soon after they arrived, the strange occurrences began again, but this time they seemed more intense. Mrs. Smith was terrified when she saw a mysterious dark figure that she couldn't explain. While cleaning out an old cupboard, she made a grim discovery: a small human skull wrapped in brown paper. Objects also began to disappear from one room, only to reappear in another, as if moved by an unseen hand. The Smiths were deeply unsettled. They weren't just hearing ghost stories. They were living one. Fearing for their safety and desperate for answers, they decided to contact the press. The story of the haunted rectory exploded, and soon all of Britain was captivated by the strange events at Borley. The sensational news stories attracted the attention of the famous paranormal investigator, Harry Price. Intrigued by the reports, Price organized a series of investigations at the rectory in the early 1930s. He brought in teams of observers and psychics, hoping to document the phenomena scientifically. What they reported was extraordinary. Investigators heard loud, unexplainable knocking sounds on walls that seemed to respond to their questions. Objects, from pebbles to small pieces of furniture, were reportedly thrown across rooms by an invisible force. Most unsettling of all was the appearance of mysterious writing on the walls and on scraps of paper. These scrawled messages were pleas for help, with some witnesses claiming they were from a trapped spirit who identified herself as Marianne. Price's investigation turned Borley Rectory into a media sensation, solidifying its reputation as a place of true paranormal activity. But with fame came skepticism. As the stories grew more dramatic, so did the doubts. Some investigators who visited the rectory believed the events were being exaggerated for attention. Others suspected that some of the phenomena were simply pranks or natural occurrences being misinterpreted in the highly charged atmosphere. Harry Price himself was a controversial figure, accused by some of staging events to create publicity. Despite the growing skepticism, the public's fascination only intensified. Visitors traveled from across the country, lining the roads outside the rectory, all hoping to catch a glimpse of a ghost or witness something unexplained. The house was no longer a quiet family home. It was a public spectacle. Then, on a cold night in February 1939, disaster struck. A fire suddenly broke out inside the rectory. The new owner, Captain W.H. Gregson, was unpacking boxes when a lamp allegedly overturned, igniting the flammable materials. The old, dry wooden structure was like a tinderbox. Flames spread with terrifying speed, engulfing the entire building. By the time the fire brigade arrived, there was little they could do. Borley Rectory burned to the ground, leaving nothing but a charred skeletal ruin. The official explanation was an accident, but many who had followed the haunting were not so sure. They wondered if the fire was a final, violent act of the spirits trapped within, or perhaps a desperate attempt to destroy the evil that resided there. In the aftermath of the fire, as workers began clearing the debris, the story took another dark turn. Buried within the rubble of the cellar, they reported discovering human bones. Some immediately speculated that these were the remains of the legendary nun, finally uncovered after centuries. The bones were given a Christian burial in the nearby Borley churchyard, an attempt to finally bring peace to the restless spirit. However, historians were never able to confirm their identity. The discovery only added another layer of mystery to the already complex and tragic tale of Borley Rectory. You might think that with the rectory gone, the story would end, but it didn't. Even after the building was reduced to ash and rubble, reports of strange activity continued. Visitors who came to see the ruins claimed they still witnessed paranormal events. People reported seeing the phantom nun, still walking her sorrowful path near the churchyard, her figure appearing and disappearing in the mist. Others saw strange, unexplained lights dancing in the empty field where the grand house once stood. The sound of footsteps could be heard on the grass at night, with no one there to make them. It seemed the fire had destroyed the building, but not the haunting. The legend of Borley Rectory had outlived the house itself. Over the years, historians and paranormal investigators have debated the case endlessly. What really happened at Borley Rectory? Many rational explanations have been proposed. Perhaps the strange sounds were just the wind, or rats in the walls. Maybe some of the events were elaborate hoaxes carried out during the height of the media frenzy. And it's certain that psychological suggestion played a huge role, with visitors arriving expecting to see a ghost and interpreting every shadow and sound as proof. Yet, many of the original witnesses, from the Bull family to the Smiths and Price's investigators, remained convinced until their dying day that they had experienced something truly unexplained, something supernatural. Today, nothing of the rectory remains. The land where it once stood is now just part of the quiet English countryside. But the village of Borley will forever be linked to its infamous haunted house. A house built in 1862, a haunting that captured the imagination of a nation, and a fire that erased the building but could not erase the legend. And some locals will still tell you, if you visit the old church on a foggy night and look closely, a silent, sorrowful figure in black can still be seen, walking the lonely path where the rectory once stood. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more true horror stories.